Harmony Creek woke under a hard white sky, and the red dust came alive with the morning heat. It settled on the boardwalk, on the rough walls of the general store, and on the faces of men who had stopped caring long ago. The spring festival was supposed to make the town feel lighter for one day, but this year it felt heavier. It felt like the whole street was holding its breath. Everyone knew why. Elias Jacob, the richest man for miles, was finding a husband for his only daughter, Delaney. He did not do anything small or quiet. He made it public, like an auction, like a prize being shown off. A wooden platform stood in front of the new town hall, dressed in bright cloth that already looked tired under the sun. 2 chairs sat on top, one for Martha Jacob and one for Delaney. Below the platform, 13 men stood in a half circle. They were lined up like they were ready to buy something. They came from ranches, towns, and camps far away. Each one carried his own kind of pride and promise. Jedediah Stone stood near the front, shining like he wanted to blind the whole crowd. His leather vest had silver pieces that caught the light. A prize bull was tied nearby, snorting and pulling at the rope. Jedediah held himself like he already owned the future. Next to him was Samuel Pike, a merchant from the east. He wore a dark suit that did not belong in this heat. Sweat ran down his face. He gripped a velvet box like it was a life rope. Everyone guessed it held something costly. There were other men too, a rancher with land deeds, a prospector with a pouch of gold dust, a farmer with a wagon full of seed corn. Every gift was meant to prove one thing: they were worth more than the next man. The people of Harmony Creek gathered around them, forming a wide circle. Women waved church papers like fans, whispering behind their hands. Men leaned on posts and swapped low jokes while passing flasks. Wagers moved through the crowd like smoke. Most eyes, though, kept drifting to one man. Wallace Blackwood stood a little apart, clean and calm. His boots looked new, polished like mirrors. His hands had no marks of work. He did not bring a bull, a deed, or a pouch of gold. He did not need to. His father's bank was his gift. Safety, power, a life far from dust and struggle. Many in town already believed Delaney would pick him because it made the most sense. On the platform, Martha Jacob kept fixing her dress and touching her daughter's hand with small, nervous taps. "Sit up straight," she whispered. "Smile a little." Delaney did not smile. At 19, she sat as still as a stone in a stream. The world moved around her, but she would not. Her hair was pulled back without fancy curls. Her dress was plain blue cotton, the kind made for work, not for showing off. Her face was beautiful in a sharp, quiet way, but it was her eyes that made people uneasy. They were a pale gray, clear and watchful, like stormlight. She looked at the suitors, but not the way a girl looks at men who want to marry her. She studied them like they were animals behind a fence. She noticed Samuel Pike's sweating fear of the sun. She saw Jedediah Stone's eyes checking the crowd, hungry for attention. She saw Wallace Blackwood standing tall like the world had never told him no. The voices around her blended into a single hum. She heard her own name in whispers. She heard jokes. She heard pity. She heard men talking about her future as if it belonged to them. Delaney felt far away from all of it. Her mother's tapping grew sharper. "Delaney, Mr. Blackwood is looking." At least nod. Delaney's gaze drifted past Wallace, past the line of suitors, past the faces in the crowd. It moved down the street as if searching for air. That was when she saw him. Near the general store, a man stood with his back to the whole show. He was tying a new rope to his saddle, like it was the only thing in the world that mattered. His clothes were worn and dusty. His hat sat low, hiding most of his face. He was lean, made of hard bone and muscle, not soft comfort. He moved slow and steady, not for show, not for anyone watching. He was not part of the festival. He looked like he did not even know it was happening. His name was Colt Hawthorne, a drifting cowboy, a hired hand who went where work was. He owned little more than his horse, his saddle, and the clothes on his back. He had come to Harmony Creek at dawn because he needed rope. His old lariat was fraying, and he could not work with it like that. Colt finished his knot, tugged it once, then turned like he was about to leave. His eyes swept across the town square in a quick, careless glance. He looked over the bunting, the crowd, the platform, the line of men. For one single beat of time, his eyes met Delaney's. There was no smile, no challenge, no special look meant to claim her. It was an accident, a passing glance. But Delaney felt something inside her shift, like a door inside her chest had cracked open. Colt looked away first. He adjusted his horse's strap and moved like he had already forgotten the whole town. On the platform, Martha Jacob leaned in with a tight smile, ready for the first suitor. The crowd pressed closer. Elias Jacob stood, proud and firm, like a man about to prove something to the world. The show began. Jedediah Stone stepped forward and started speaking in a loud, smooth voice. He talked about land, about joining families, about power and legacy. He gestured grandly to the bull, to the sun, to the very air, like he owned it all. The crowd listened. Some nodded. Some clapped. Delaney heard nothing that mattered. Her mind slipped into the quiet place inside her where the truth lived. That quiet was not weakness. It was a wall. It was built from the last 2 years, from a night she could never forget. She did not replay every detail, but she carried the scars like invisible marks beneath her skin. She had been taken once, not by monsters from stories, but by plain, cruel men who treated violence like business. A sack over her head, rope on her wrists. A week of darkness and cold and laughing voices. A week that burned the old Delaney away. When she escaped, she did not come back as the same girl. Words did not come easy anymore. Trust did not come at all. Her parents did not understand. They wanted their cheerful daughter back. They wanted the old smile, the old softness, the old proof that their world was safe. Instead, they got her silence. Delaney remembered standing in the house and hearing her father's voice from his study. He was frustrated, angry. He spoke of gossip, of reputation, of her being damaged, of needing a husband to manage her, to fix things in the eyes of the town. Her mother had sounded worried, but her father's words had been cold like iron. Delaney had not cried that day. She had simply learned what she already feared. To them, she was not a heart. She was an asset, and that was why this platform existed. Jedediah's speech ended, and polite applause rolled through the crowd. Her mother whispered again, "Nod, Delaney." Delaney turned her face to Jedediah and gave the smallest nod a person could give without meaning it. She did not offer him a smile. She did not offer him herself. Her eyes slipped back down the street. Colt Hawthorne was still there, moving on his own time, letting his horse drink at the trough. He wiped his brow and stood with his back to the festival, like the world could shout all it wanted. He would not turn unless he chose to. Delaney watched him like he was the only real thing in a town full of costumes. The next suitor stepped forward, and Delaney Jacob, sitting on that platform like a prize meant to be claimed, already knew something deep and dangerous. 13 men had come to win her, but the only man who mattered was the one who did not even know she was watching. And somewhere inside Delaney's guarded heart, a choice was already being made. The suitors kept coming, one after another, like a parade that would not end. Each man stepped forward with a gift, a promise, or a fancy speech. One read poetry from a small book, words about roses and faraway places that did not belong under this harsh sun. Another spoke about wagons and trade routes, like Delaney's life was just another shipment to be moved. A farmer talked about quiet days and safe seasons, like the land was a gentle thing. Delaney sat still through it all. The words did not touch her. They slid off her like dust off stone. Her eyes kept returning to Colt Hawthorne. He leaned on a fence near the livery corral, arms crossed, cigarette smoke lifting and fading in the wind. He was not watching the ceremony. He was watching the wild mustangs penned inside, studying them like they were a puzzle only he could solve. His stillness was not empty. It was work. It was focus. It was quiet purpose. That quiet pulled at Delaney in a way she could not explain. Then Wallace Blackwood stepped forward. The crowd went silent. Even the gamblers stopped whispering. Wallace moved with calm confidence, like the end of the story had already been written. He did not bow or show shame. He did not bring a gift in his hands. He stood there as if the whole town belonged to his family's bank. "Miss Jacob," Wallace began, his voice smooth and clear, "I will not offer you cattle, land, or pretty poems. Our lives are built on influence, not show. This union is not just marriage. It is power. It is a future this territory will bend toward." He spoke like he was talking to Delaney's father, not to Delaney. Elias Jacob rose behind his pride, chest out, eyes shining. He loved Wallace's words because they sounded like business, like control, like victory. Wallace finally looked up at Delaney. "I offer you consequence," he said, "a name that will never be questioned again." He held out his clean hand, palm up, like a deal. The silence that followed was thick. It was the kind of silence that demanded one answer. Elias turned toward Delaney with a wide smile. "Well, daughter," he said loudly, letting the crowd hear, "you've heard the offers. Now step down and take the hand of your future husband." Martha leaned close, her voice shaking. "Go on, Delaney. Please." Delaney did not move for a moment. She sat there like the world could not push her. Her gray eyes looked past Wallace's hand and past her father's smile. She was staring at something deeper, something inside herself that had already chosen a path. Then she stood. The simple sound of her dress shifting was loud in the quiet. Her mother made a small sound, half relief, half fear. The crowd leaned forward, sure they were watching the perfect ending. Delaney stepped to the edge of the platform. She walked down the 3 wooden steps with slow, steady care. People started to breathe again. They thought she was walking to Wallace. Elias's smile grew bigger. But Delaney did not turn toward the banker's son. She turned the other way, straight across the open square. At first, no one understood. A few heads tilted. A few mouths fell open. The crowd began to part like water before a blade. Delaney walked past Jedediah Stone. His confident smirk slipped off his face like it was never real. She walked past Samuel Pike, who clutched his velvet box tight as if she might steal his pride from him. She walked past the poet and the rancher and the farmer, not even looking at them. Dust rose around her ankles with every step. She was walking toward Colt Hawthorne. Colt saw her only when she was already cutting through the crowd. At first he looked confused, then cautious. He had seen rich men's trouble before. He knew it could spread fast. He pushed off the fence and straightened, cigarette falling from his lips. He crushed it under his boot without thinking. Delaney stopped in front of him. Up close, he looked older than she first thought. Not old in years, but old in the eyes. Like a man who had learned hard lessons and stopped asking life to be fair. His face was rough with dust and sun. His shirt was faded and patched at the elbow. His hands were scarred and strong. Delaney lifted her right hand. It was steady. Her voice came out clear, sharp, and calm, cutting through the silence like a knife. "I choose you." For one long moment, the whole town stopped breathing. Then everything broke at once. A woman in the crowd shrieked. Martha Jacob went pale and collapsed back onto the chair. Men shouted and laughed like they could not believe what they were seeing. Some of the suitors cursed under their breath. Wallace Blackwood froze, his hand still held out, his face blank with shock and humiliation. Elias Jacob's smile vanished so fast it looked like it had been ripped off him. His face turned red, then darker, then purple with rage. "You will not," Elias roared, stepping forward. "You will not do this." But Delaney did not look back at her father. Her eyes stayed on Colt. Colt stared at her like he was trying to read something he had never learned to read. He looked at her face, not her hand. He saw what the others did not. He saw the fear she refused to show. He saw the fire she would not put out. He saw the truth behind her quiet strength. He understood the price of what she had just done. He lifted his eyes past her shoulder for a single second. He saw the rich man's fury. He saw the crowd swelling. He saw the banker's son's hatred growing. Then he looked back at Delaney. He gave a slow, small nod. "All right," he said in a low voice. "Let's go." Those two words hit Delaney's chest like a drum. Colt's hand closed around her wrist, not rough, but firm. The grip of a man who knew hesitation could get you killed. He turned and started walking toward his horse. Behind them, Elias screamed for the sheriff. Sheriff Abernathy, a round man who liked easy days and cheap whiskey, took one weak step forward. His hand hovered near his gun, but he did not draw it. He did not want to be part of this. Colt did not slow down. He reached his horse, swung into the saddle, then leaned down and held a hand toward Delaney. "Up," he said. Delaney took his hand. She stepped into the stirrup and let him pull her up behind him. She settled against the saddle, her arms wrapping around his waist because the world was moving too fast now to pretend she did not need something to hold. Elias Jacobs' voice thundered behind them. "Stop them! Stop them right now!" Colt pushed his horse forward. Then, in the middle of the chaos, he did something that shocked Delaney. He turned the horse toward the general store. He reined in hard, jumped down, and walked inside like the town's screaming did not matter. He came out moments later carrying supplies. A sack of flour, bacon, coffee beans. He tossed coins on the counter, more than enough, and swung back into the saddle. That was when Delaney understood something. He was not just running. He was planning. He urged the horse into a trot, then a strong, steady pace out of town. The shouting behind them faded into the wind. Harmony Creek grew smaller, like a bad dream falling away behind her. The sun began to slide down the sky. Orange light spilled across the land. The heat slowly drained, leaving a cold edge that made Delaney's skin tighten. They rode into harsher country. Rocks rose like broken teeth. Flat mesas stood tall and silent under the wide sky. There was no comfort out here, no soft place to land. Delaney pressed her cheek against Colt's back. His shirt smelled of dust, horse, and smoke. It was not a clean smell. It was real. She did not ask where they were going. The only thing that mattered was that they were going away. They rode most of the night. The stars came out like scattered fire. The wind whispered through sagebrush. Colt kept moving, guided by something inside him that did not need signs or roads. Near dawn, pale light spread across the horizon. Colt finally slowed the horse and spoke again, his voice rough from the long ride. "We're here." Delaney lifted her head. A cabin sat in a shallow basin, half hidden by the gloom. It looked abandoned, like hope had walked out and never returned. The roof sagged. The boards were gray and cracked. A broken corral lay scattered nearby. A stone-lined well stood off to the side, the hand pump leaning like a tired man. Colt helped Delaney down. Her legs shook when her feet touched the ground. She grabbed his arm for balance. He did not comment. He only stood steady until she could stand on her own. He shoved the crooked cabin door open. Dust lifted into the air. Inside was one room, a soot-black fireplace, a rough table, a single stool, a cot in the corner with a thin old mattress. Colt struck a match and looked around like he had been here before, or like he expected this kind of place. He went to the well, worked the pump until water finally ran, clear and cold. He filled a dented bucket and carried it inside, setting it down between them like it was a gift. Then he looked at Delaney. "You can choose where you sleep," he said. And without another word, he turned and stepped back outside to tend to his horse, leaving Delaney alone in the dusty silence, staring at the bucket of water and the empty space that would be her new life. She had burned her old world down. Now she stood in the quiet ashes of a new one, and the fear came, small and sharp. Because she knew the people she left behind would not forgive this. Not Elias Jacob, not Wallace Blackwood, and not the kind of men who believed a woman could be taken back like stolen property. The first days at the cabin felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. Delaney woke each morning to silence so wide it made her ears ring. Colt was gone before sunrise, moving like a man who trusted the land more than people. When he came back at dusk, he brought the plain things they needed: water, firewood, sometimes a rabbit or a pair of quail. He did not talk much. He did not ask why she chose him. He did not make promises he could not keep. Delaney did not ask about his past either. She saw sadness in the cabin, in the soot-stained stone, in the way the roof sagged as if it had given up. But she did not push. Her own past was heavy enough. So they worked. Delaney learned quickly that survival out here was not a dream. It was a list of hard chores that never ended. Water had to be pumped and carried. Wood had to be found and split. Dust had to be swept out every day, and it still came back. Her hands blistered, then toughened into calluses. Her shoulders ached, then grew stronger. Little by little, the cabin stopped feeling like a ruin and started feeling like something they were building. Colt noticed more than he said. Some mornings, Delaney found a small stack of easy split wood set by the door. Once, she found a tin cup on the table with a few wildflowers inside, not pretty, but alive. Colt never pointed to them. He acted like they had appeared on their own. Then, one afternoon, the sky turned dark. A hard rain came down, cold and fast. Colt sat on the porch to keep watch, soaked through, too tired to move. His eyes closed, and he fell asleep where he sat. Delaney saw him shiver. She hesitated, then took the old heavy coat from the peg and stepped outside. She draped it over his shoulders with careful hands. Colt opened his eyes, alert at first, then calmer when he saw her. He looked at the coat, then at her face. "Thank you," he said. The words were simple, but they landed deep. For Delaney, it was the first crack in the wall between them. For Colt, it was a quiet step into something he had not allowed himself to want. A month later, their past found them. Delaney was in the garden when she saw dust on the horizon. 3 riders came into the basin, and the one in front wore fine black like he was too clean for this land. Wallace Blackwood. He stopped his horse and looked at the cabin like it was an insult. "So this is what you chose," he called out. "Mud and sticks." Delaney did not answer. Colt walked in from the far side of the basin, rifle in hand, and placed himself between Wallace and Delaney. His voice was low and steady. "You should leave." Wallace smiled like he enjoyed cruelty. He spoke of law, of judges, of Delaney being confused, damaged, unfit to choose. He called her property without using the word. Colt's face did not change. "Right out." Wallace's hand drifted toward his pistol, then stopped. Colt's stillness was not a bluff. Wallace felt it. He backed away with a threat. "You will regret this," Wallace said. Then he and his men rode off, leaving dust and cold fear behind. That night, Colt slept on the porch with his rifle across his knees. Delaney tried to sleep inside, but her mind would not rest. Every sound outside felt like a footstep. Then the horse screamed. Delaney bolted upright and ran to the door. Orange light flickered against the window. The corral was on fire. Flames climbed high, eating the dry wood like it was hungry. Colt was already moving. He soaked a blanket at the pump and ran toward the blaze, calling to his horse in a steady voice. The animal was trapped, rearing and crying, eyes wild with fear. Delaney stood frozen for one heartbeat, then her body moved on its own. She hauled water, threw dirt, did anything she could, but the fire was too strong. Colt plunged through the flames with the wet blanket over his head. For a moment, he vanished in the fire. Then he was inside, grabbing the horse's halter, talking low and calm, as if his voice could hold the world together. A burning beam fell from the lean-to roof. Colt shoved the horse hard, pushing it clear. The beam caught Colt's arm. His cry was short, sharp, and swallowed by the roar of the fire. He tore himself free and stumbled out with the horse. The animal ran, shaking into the open, alive. Colt dropped to one knee, smoke rolling off him. When the fire finally died, the corral was black and broken. The smell of burned wood hung in the air like a curse. Delaney saw Colt's arm. The skin was red and raw, blistered and torn. He tried to hide it, turning away like pain was nothing. Something broke inside Delaney. Her tears came fast and hot. She grabbed his burned hand without thinking, holding it in both of hers. "They did this," she whispered, voice shaking with rage. That man and his kind. Colt stood still, letting her cry. Then, very slowly, he lifted his good hand and touched her hair. It was the first time he had touched her at all. The next morning, Delaney cleaned his burn and wrapped it with cloth she tore from her last clean underdress. She crushed leaves into a paste, the way she remembered from old ranch talk, anything to soothe the wound. Colt did not fight her. He held out his arm and took the pain in silence, trusting her hands. While he healed, Delaney took over the hard work. She hauled water, split wood, checked snares. Her body shook with exhaustion, but she did not quit. Colt watched her with quiet respect, then taught her what he could. One day he handed her the rifle. He showed her how to brace it, how to aim, how to squeeze instead of yank the trigger. He stood behind her, guiding her arms with steady pressure. When the gun kicked, he held her firm so it did not knock her down. She hit the target at last, and a small laugh escaped her before she could stop it. Colt did not smile, but his eyes softened. As weeks passed, they rebuilt again. They bought 3 thin cows from a passing rancher for cheap. They fixed the corral slowly, working side by side. One night, a cow struggled to give birth, and Delaney helped Colt pull the calf free under lantern light. When the calf finally stood, shaking but alive, Delaney felt a deep satisfaction she had never felt in her father's grand house. That same night, Colt said something that cut her deep. "If you want to leave," he told her, "a rancher will pass through soon. He could take you back." Delaney looked at his bandaged arm, at the calf, at the cabin. She understood he was trying to protect her, even if it cost him everything. "I'm not here because I had no choice," she said. "I'm here because I chose." Colt did not answer, but he did not ask her to go again. Late summer came, and the threat returned, bigger and sharper. 4 riders rode into the basin. Elias Jacob was in front, face hard with anger. A lawyer rode beside him, holding papers like they were a weapon. 2 hired guns followed, hands near their pistols. The lawyer spoke first, saying Delaney was not well, saying the judge had given her father control, saying Colt was a kidnapper. Delaney stepped forward beside Colt. She did not hide behind him. "I was not kidnapped," she said. "I chose." Elias roared that she was his daughter, his blood, his property. He insulted her hands, her clothes, her life. He offered to erase the scandal, to bring her home, to give her back to Wallace like she was a deal that could still be saved. Delaney walked into the cabin and came out with the rifle. She did not point it at anyone. She held it across her body like a truth. "You do not own me," she said, voice clear and steady. "That girl you thought you could sell is gone. She died waiting for a rescue that never came." Elias flinched like she had slapped him. "I belong to no one," Delaney said. "This is my home. This is my choice." The lawyer's face went pale. The hired guns looked at each other, unsure. They had been paid to scare a helpless girl, not to face a woman who would not bend. Elias stared at her like she was a stranger, then turned his horse and rode away without a word. The others followed. When they were gone, Colt reached for Delaney's hand. His grip was steady, warm, and real. He did not speak. He did not need to. A year passed. Their basin changed. The corral stood solid again. The cows had calves. Delaney's garden grew larger. The cabin smelled of smoke and bread instead of dust and old sadness. To buy winter supplies, they needed to sell a few calves. That meant going back to Harmony Creek. They rode into town on market day, Colt in front, Delaney behind him. She wore a plain dark dress she had made herself. On her left hand was a simple wooden ring. Colt had carved and polished smooth. It was not gold. It was not a show. It was a promise. The town went quiet as they entered. People stared like they were seeing a ghost walk in daylight. Delaney felt the old fear try to rise, but it had no place to stand anymore. She was not the girl on the platform. She was the woman who had built a home out of nothing. She slipped down from the saddle and began to walk. The old Suitors were there, scattered in the crowd like unwanted memories. Jedediah Stone looked shocked. Samuel Pike looked angry. The poet looked away. And near the bank stood Wallace Blackwood, pale and tight with hate. Delaney walked past them all. She did not stop. She did not argue. She did not beg them to understand. She walked back to Colt and reached for his hand, fingers linking with his like it was the simplest thing in the world. Then she turned toward the watching town and spoke with calm truth. "I chose right." No one answered. Wallace Blackwood turned and disappeared into the bank like a man running from something he could not fix. Colt squeezed Delaney's hand once, firm and steady, and together they walked toward the livestock pens to do their business. The dust rose around their boots, and the sun burned bright overhead. But for the first time in Harmony Creek, Delaney Jacob did not feel owned by anyone's eyes. She felt free.